If you're trying to decide whether the B2 Audio Rampage Series 15-inch dual 2-ohm 4-inch voice coil subwoofer is the right addition to your car audio setup, you're probably asking three things at once. Who will actually feel the benefit of that kind of power? Who can safely walk away? And does the price make sense for a typical driver? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The hesitation most of us feel before dropping a few $100s on a sub isn't just about the headline numbers, it's about whether the rest of the system can handle it, whether the trunk space can accommodate a 15-inch beast, and whether you'll end up listening to distortion because the amp can't keep up. Let's start with the category itself. Car subwoofers sit at the intersection of electrical demand, enclosure design, and listening environment. A 15-inch driver that claims 5000W RMS and a 10000W peak is not a plug-and-play item. It's a component that expects a purpose-built enclosure, a high-current amplifier, and a vehicle that can physically host it. Most casual drivers who only want a little extra thump for a daily commute end up with a sub that sits in the trunk and never gets close to its power ceiling. That's why the first question is, does your rig already have the power budget and space to let this thing breathe? On the strength side, the Rampage's dual 2-ohm voice coils give you wiring flexibility that you don't see on a lot of budget-oriented subs. If you wire the coils in parallel, you get a 1-ohm load that can pull a lot of current from a robust amp, perfect for those who like to push 1000W or more into a single sub. In series, you get a 4-ohm load, which is gentler on the amp and can be a better match for a moderate-size head unit. That versatility means you can tailor the setup to the exact power plant you have, rather than being forced into a one-size-fits-all scenario. The real-world payoff of that power is noticeable when you're at a tailgate or a backyard block party. Imagine a group of friends cranking up a playlist that's heavy on modern hip-hop or EDM. With a sub that can sustain several thousand watts, the low frequencies stay tight and audible even at high volume, rather than turning mushy or disappearing altogether. In a competitive car audio environment, that kind of consistent output can be the difference between a good and a great sound system. The 4-inch voice coil diameter also translates to a larger magnetic gap, which tends to keep the driver cooler during long sessions, something you'll appreciate if you're running the amp near its limits for extended periods. But the practical weaknesses are just as important. First, the power requirement is massive. To truly leverage 5000W RMS, you need an amplifier that can deliver at least 800W RMS per channel into a lone load, and you have to feed it with a sturdy wiring harness, high amp fuses, and a solid grounding scheme. If you pair it with a modest 300W amp, you'll be throttling the sub, and the result is a lot of wasted potential and possible distortion. Second, the physical footprint is a challenge. A 15-inch driver with a 4-inch voice coil sits deep in the enclosure, often requiring at least a 2-foot deep box to achieve the low-frequency response the specs promise. If you have a compact sedan, you might end up sacrificing cargo space or even having to mount the sub in a custom location, which adds installation time and cost. Another hidden trade-off is the heat management. Even though the larger voice coil helps with cooling, pushing thousands of watts into a sealed or ported box can still generate a lot of heat. In a hot summer day, you'll want to make sure the enclosure has ventilation or you're using a high-flow design, otherwise you risk thermal compression that reduces output just when you need it most. Finally, the price tag reflects not just the sub itself but the ecosystem it demands: high-current amp, thick-gauge speaker wire, proper enclosure material, and possibly a reinforced mounting bracket. So who should actually buy this thing? If you're an enthusiast who already has a high-output amplifier, or you're planning to upgrade the amp as part of this purchase, the Rampage fits nicely. People who regularly host outdoor gatherings, drive to music festivals, or compete in car audio contests will find that the ability to sustain deep, punchy bass at high SPLs is worth the extra effort. Also, if you have a larger vehicle, full-size SUV, truck, or a custom van build where you can allocate a dedicated sub-enclosure without compromising daily usability, the size becomes a feature rather than a limitation. The dual-coil flexibility also makes it a solid choice for anyone who likes to experiment with wiring configurations to squeeze the most out of their amp. Conversely, if you're a commuter who simply wants a little extra thump on the radio, you're probably better off with a smaller 10-inch sub that matches the stock head unit's output. Those who have limited trunk space or who